Well, all right. Welcome everyone to another Gen City Labs Live. My name is Mike Shaman. I'm CEO of Gen City Labs. With me, as always, are the inimitable MK and the fantastic Eric Arvi, respectively, our head of marketing and partnerships. Special guest today, Pamela O'Kane with DGTL. Hey, Pamela. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
So thank you for joining us, Pamela. Everybody in the audience, if you are on LinkedIn, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on X or any of the wonderful platforms that we're distributing to, welcome. We appreciate you guys joining us. Today, we have a really fun conversation. As you know, every couple of weeks, we try to find something new and exciting. This week, we're going to be talking about the future of retail experiences for Gen Alpha and beyond. So before we dive in on any of the GCL stuff, Pamela, why don't you tell everybody in the audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about DGTL?
Yeah. Well, nice to see everybody. And thank you so much for welcoming me. Our company is really focused on brand experience in physical spaces. So, really building out memorable experiences within physical locations. So both retail as well as live events.
Awesome. And if you in the audience have been to a Nike store recently, there's a very good chance you already know DGTL. Nike, one of their largest clients. And Pamela, I don't know if you want to describe some of the more fun, cooler projects that you've launched recently, anything that you're allowed to talk about. Why don't you tell them real quick before we dive into the future?
Yeah. I mean, we're very lucky to be very part of the launch of new Nike stores. So they're doing new generations of Nike-specific stores. And as part of that, we have been their lead in terms of digital integration. So a lot of LED displays, very custom work in terms of kind of integrating tech that is very specifically customized towards the Nike aesthetic. So we've built some custom products for them. We've also been a lead integrator in terms of as they've been launching new stores, we've been going out. Not only have we developed a product to meet their needs, but then we're also going out in the field and then installing and bringing it to life.
Right on. So if anybody in the audience has been to Nike in Seoul or Singapore or Toronto or all over the US, chances are DGTL has had a hand in what's been created there. So before we dive into future of retail, one of the important things I think we were talking right before we jumped on is let's define generations. Because as you look at demographics and you look at the changing habits of consumers in general, you've got some very different things going on, right? I am a Gen Xer, which we delightfully get forgotten about when people meme each other and trash each other a little bit. But my generation, I think, is 1970 to 1980 ish was kind of the birthdays. In general, running from 40 to 50 years old. You have your Gen Ys, you have your millennials, you have your Gen Zs. Gen Alpha comes after that. MK, can you tell the audience a little bit about breakdown, and then maybe we touch on changing habits from each of the generations?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was kind of interesting to think about is Gen Alpha generally starts around 2010 births. So they were born the year of the iPad. So when you start thinking about who they are and natively how digital they are just head and shoulders above the other generations. I think millennials, we all kind of feel like we had one foot in the pre-social media era. And then as we look at Gen Z, they're coming of age into their professional lives and graduating school. Gen Alpha, definitely the youth of today, with the oldest ones starting to be teenagers. And we had to actually check what comes after Gen Alpha, being Gen Beta, starting to be born this year, next year, that next generation coming. So it's really interesting to think about Gen Alpha as they become consumers and as they enter to different purchasing behaviors, what their expectations are, where they see the intersection of digital and physical, where they see experiences, how they're informed by it. I think one of the most fascinating things I saw a statistic that was over 70% of Gen Alpha identifies as gamers. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about what they look for in entertainment, in participation, in rewards, in leveling up. Um, so they definitely classify, using that term connotates a really interesting group, but it's just the starting point of thinking about the next generation of experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of my generation. You said it at the top, right? I straddle the like wired telephone. I remember the first remote control was still wired to the television running across my parents' bedroom. All of the old school stuff, right? You pretty much had to go to a store to buy something. That transition over into Gen Alpha, which is a truly digital native individual, right? That also, by the way, is very interested in digital assets, right? And I know both of my kids, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, Gen Alpha squarely, and my son's birthday is coming up. He wants Robux. He wants Fortnite V-Bucks. He does not necessarily want anything real. Now that's started to change a little bit, right? That last couple of years for him in particular was all Robux, V-Bucks. Now he's starting to get more interest in things. He actually has, funny enough, a few friends who are sneakerheads at the age of 10, which I didn't even know happened. Pamela, I'll throw it over to you. When you think about creating unique experiences for Nike stores, right? How much of that is kind of just broad capture all versus any focused demographic, whether it's age focused or sneakerheads or others? Do you guys do much segmentation in terms of when you build and when you're thinking of creative experiences inside retail environments?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, broadly, there's kind of two buckets that we focus on in terms of, integrating tech to make, experiences. So the first is, how do we seamlessly integrate the physical experience when they're in store with digital? And then the other part is how do we make a very memorable, immersive, taking to another world kind of experience? And I feel like that is the way to really engage, especially kind of the younger generations. It's like, how do we take them to an experience that is truly immersive, truly unique, truly memorable, versus kind of just the day-to-day engagement in the shop site, right? So that's what we've really focused on is how do we create an experience that they're gonna, they feel like they were taken to another world, I think is the right way to couch that.
Can you give a specific example? I know, and honestly, the one I'm thinking of, I know you guys had integrated some really cool RFID experiences into some of the ribbon displays that you had. I think this might have been from Seoul.
Yeah.
Can you tell folks like what did that entail and what did it do so that we can get them thinking about something specific and contextual?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity with technology, to have some kind of personal moments. So people feel that it's not just a generic interaction; they're having a personal interaction within the display. So our ribbon displays, we have a footwear wall, but we've also integrated technology into it. So it's an LED footwear wall, but you can go up to it, and there is the capabilities for you can move shoes and have the display automatically update as you're changing the footwear that you're putting on that shelf. So you're really getting kind of within a natural shopping environment. You can switch out shoes, you can get information about the specific shoe, but as you're switching it out, you're getting real-time acknowledgement of what you've changed, and then also information on that specific shoe.
I love that tangible component to picking up a physical object, place it on a shelf, LED display in front of you changing. There's something not only personal about that, but performative. And I think as we think about younger generations, right? Gen Z, Gen Alpha in particular, you think about social media and you think about what I'm doing needs to be something I'm broadcasting, right, to others. It's such a part of, this is the madness of seeing everybody dancing and doing TikTok dances all over the place. But like, I think that as we, and for Gen City Labs, those of you guys who know us as Experience Design and Creative Technology Studio, we are constantly building moments that we want to allow people to capture and share socially. So that used to be a photo, right? It used to be on your Facebook page. I'm dating myself. But now I'm going to create an Instagram reel. I'm going to post this up on TikTok. I'm going to narrate this to my audience. So it's very, very different, but I love that experience in particular, Pamela, because it's just got all the elements of personalization, customization based off your interest. You've got, that kind of fantastic switchover that's surprising, that has that kind of, surprise and delight moment. Experiences like that are, what can be subtle triggers for consumers to say, I need to go back to that place, right? I'm going to remember that brand and that brand experience.
Yeah. And within the natural shopping habit, right? Like you're not having to like bring something over to somewhere else where you wouldn't normally use that product. It's just within the natural engagement of that product, you get that surprise and delight.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So, I had a question a little bit about, your process for coming up and brainstorming. I just love kind of the nuts and bolts of how an agency, especially an agency like DGTL, might, come up with all these ideas. Do you guys have sort of an internal exercise you guys do? How do you innovate?
Yeah, no, I love that question. So it's definitely a combination thing. So we're very lucky. We get to work with a lot of very innovative brands. So we get a lot of insight into kind of the forefront of where the industry is going, and we've really leveraged that to see, okay, these are the things where these innovative brands are going, and how can we get then even further ahead of it in terms of where they're going, what are the things that we can do to support that. And the fast lane, the footwear wall we did was very much something that we have custom developed, knowing that was where the direction they were going, and then we were able to execute that. But then also we're thinking, okay, well, now you have this, where else can we go with it? And that was where the RFID and having kind of more that unique interaction where you're switching out footwear came from. So it's really, focusing on, where are the innovative brands going, and being aware of what trends are in the market. And then also, okay, so how do we take it to the next level from that? And so that's very much been part of our process in terms of, developing future innovations.
Cool. So just diving a little bit deeper into DGTL, can you just tell us a little bit about the origin story? How big is the team? What kind of roles do you guys have?
Yeah. So we started in 2017. We are still a relatively small organization. There's 16 of us. But I always, say we punch above our weight, right? Like, so we do with this small team, and I have absolutely incredible team, which I have to give props to because they are the secret to how we do what we do. But we were able to do global work with very large clients. And a big part of that has been, how our team has come together and our cohesion. But we started very early on, specifically with your team as well, to do some very large projects, which helped continue to grow us. And then, of course, Nike has been a big part of our ability to kind of grow. And then we've been diversifying since then. So, we've really tried to focus on two different areas, which is in the retail area and then as well as in live events. And that has been great just from a diversification standpoint. So we can do fabrication, we can run your live events, and then we also have, a team to do, our custom LED displays. So having all of those kind of different buckets that we're able to work in has been a big part of how we've been able to grow and succeed through, as everyone is probably very well aware of, some trying times in the last few years. So, yeah.
A big part of our audience is event marketers, right? We have a lot of brands, we have a lot of event marketers that tune in. And it's worth mentioning that our relationship with DGTL started in the event space, right? It started with doing in-stadium activations for a short period of time. We have worked on some really awesome projects with UFC, creating some fan experiences for Fight Week. We've worked with CBS Ghost to promote the show, both as kind of a street social thing as well as at Comic-Cons. Plenty of Nike work and beyond. really fun stuff over the years. And I think, MK, I'll throw this over to you. As we think about events and the types of experience that can be created there, where does a brand marketer's event strategy sit, and how does the long tail of that play into what types of experiences they might want to think about embracing in the retail space?
Yeah, I think the word that comes up so much for us in the event space is storytelling. If we can architect a narrative that feeds you through the booth, if you're going to do something like a walkthrough, if you're going to do one of those museum of insert whatever here, you're going to approach those kind of stories sequentially. You're going to architect them. And I often think that my perception of retail, at least, is that that's less intentional about a story and more about psychology and human behavior. As far as, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to go to the right in the grocery store, I am going to walk the perimeter, and I need to be drawn down the aisles, and those psychology elements that are all about triggering purchasing behavior. And often in the event space, that's not the behavior we're trying to trigger. We're looking to create memories, we're looking to create interaction, we're looking to get press or social media coverage. And so to see what event cues we could bring over to retail, I think, is a really fascinating approach.
Yeah, I really love, and we've seen it in the past, right? Is it starts off as an event strategy. The beauty of using events as kind of a testing ground is you get that initial consumer experience. If something's winning, if it falls flat, the type of reaction you're getting, and then taking something that you've invested and then being able to pull it over. I think is something that we've seen some clients do. Some orgs are very, very large and don't, right hand doesn't always talk with left hand. So it can also be very challenging when you're dealing with large brand organizations with different stakeholders and different decision makers up and down the chain. It looks like we have a question from the audience. Hi, Lauren. Where do we envision retail engagements innovating in the next 5 years?
And I think this is super interesting too. This whole stream started up with the fact that National Retail Federation had their big show in New York in January, and then coming up soon is the Retail Innovation Summit. So it's been really fascinating to see across the entire industry what they're rolling out as far as innovation, where they're shining a spotlight. Obviously, lots of things behind the scenes, which as a marketer, I'm less excited about, robotic automation, fulfillment of orders, packaging, labeling. I don't know shit about that. But as we think about the shopping experience, the in-store experience, the brand experience from the windows before you even walk in, I think that's really the cool area for us to explore.
Yeah. So at NRF, I know you were there, you were checking everything out. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you as a like, oh, I haven't seen that before, or something that was like, dang, that's it?
I think we as creative folks are blessed to see things as a blank canvas and figure out how, if we were executing on them, how we would use the foundational technology, how we would put together the pieces. If it's like Legos, is it dumping out the pieces and following the playbook piece by piece, or are we going to deviate and tell our own story with the bricks? And so there was lots of AI powered conversation experiences. So instead of just thinking about the box that pops up on a website in the bottom corner to assist your digital shopping experience, having that start to translate into the stores was a big topic. But we're still at that era of, okay, but why? Are you actually going to help my experience, or am I going to spend 15 minutes pressing buttons on a screen and still wish that someone had come and helped me, or that there was still a personal touch or something like that? So AI conversation was a huge one of them. Surprisingly, augmented reality wasn't being talked about. And I think that's another one of those, we know it's a really cool technology and we look at it as a blank slate. And maybe some brands are just still trying to figure out how to use it to tell a story that needs to be told, how to actually level up the experience, not just tech for the sake of tech, but tech for the benefit of the shopper. They also had, I'm trying to think of some of my other favorites. Um, really changing what stops people in their tracks. What I think of as mall window clings and displays have gotten a little old, and a lot of brands are doing a lot more dynamically with digital signage, being able to update and tell a new story every day or updating throughout the day, integrating social into their feed. So I think there was a lot about dynamic digital displays that really put the store owner or the retailer in control of their space.
Yeah, so I'll take it back to AI, AR. I think the same thing, right? We're starting to see artificial intelligence kind of weave its way into the consumer experience. From my 5-year outlook, I'd say that part of that it is more likely that AI will be used in subtle ways to track users through the store, to trigger changes in the way that layouts are provided and built, to change the way that products are positioned based on how people are looking at things and things like that. Like that to me is a little bit less overt and in your face for a consumer than it is like just improving efficiency and doing some of the blocking and tackling background stuff. The augmented reality thing is something that I think what we'll see is more deep integration and alignment with mobile devices. Right now you walk through the store, it's very traditional. I'm Gen X, so I want to see a price tag. I want to pick up a product, look at it. There are certainly a lot of experiences that can be built using augmented reality to trigger based off of viewing a physical product and then getting specs, getting other information. Essentially, it's using AR as a shortcut, almost QR code like, right? It's somebody sees a product. If there's not a salesperson around, how do I engage that individual? How do I create an interactive experience for them? And then how do I create something memorable, right? How do I increase the intent to purchase for that user? And I think that maybe AR is like the step beyond. First step is like engage a user with their mobile device to allow them to very quickly and easily access more information. I think that's step one. And I think that, we see that in place right now with QR codes is a very basic thing, right? That still takes action. I have to take my phone out. I have to pull up the camera. I have to hit a QR code. I'm sent to a website, right? And then now I can browse. So it's not the most intriguing. It's pragmatic. But in terms of creating experience, like what Pamela was talking about earlier with, kind of creating something fantastic, something resonant, doesn't quite get there. So I can see people improving on that kind of pragmatic augmented reality experience a little bit.
And I feel like it makes a difference too, as we talk about Nike environments, a Nike flagship store, 100% their story, 100% their products. You might be considering sneaker A or B, but they're going to be from the same brand. If you're going to leave the store with a shopping bag, they're going to win. Compared to a department store or other retailer where it's multiple brands side by side, and you're forced to showcase your differentiating factors and really get someone over the line. And what popped into my head as you were talking was Tom's shoes. The whole reason people buy Toms is the charitable element to it. So how, when you're looking at two sneakers on a shelf, are you actually going to tell them the story of charity or make sure they leave knowing that that was an element or that could have influenced a purchase?
Yeah. And by the way, for those of you guys that don't know the Tom's reference, and correct me if I'm wrong, MK, but if you buy a pair of Tom's, they give a pair of shoes to person in need.
Yes.
Which is cool, right? It's honestly also another 5-year retail trend is likely embracing the, better for the world types of scenarios, whether that's in the materials they use to fabricate, whether that's in the messages that they're getting across, the corporate social responsibility type of activations, and making sure that consumers are aware that they're aware and that they're trying to both, do everything from reducing carbon footprint to helping lift up those who may need it. I can see that being fairly pervasive in retail activations as well.
So we started the conversation with Gen Alpha. So I have a slightly different take on this. My son's now 13, and like you, Mike, wants mostly digital things. However, you look at the pipeline before you get to the retail store. In some cases, when we're targeting this demographic, starts inside these virtual spaces Roblox, Fortnite, etc., have tons of brand engagements. So, Nike, Ralph Lauren, NASCAR, Gucci, etc., all these have like these great, like inside of Roblox, so having a connection to, oh, there's a virtual sneaker inside the game, or a virtual, avatar or shirt or whatever. If I could buy that physically, that's definitely something I could see my son begging me for.
Yeah. So like the digital companion
Yeah.
kind of component.
Yep.
I agree. I think that's potentially a big deal. It kind of dives into metaverse and dives into what will become of the virtual space. Ooh, you know what? We haven't had a segment on Apple Vision Pro yet. Yeah. We totally need to do that, because as we go about building unique, innovative experiences, we have begun experimentation with Apple Vision Pro and should have some pretty fun stuff to share in that in the not too distant future. Real quick room reset, because we are at the 30-minute mark. Mike Shaman, Gen City Labs. Our guest today is Pamela O'Kane with DGTL. We are talking all things retail innovation. If you are joining us on LinkedIn, thank you. If you are viewing this after on YouTube or X or other, we appreciate you guys. We do this every 2 weeks, so feel free to check in with us, give us all a follow, and come on back. Pamela, 5 years out, what do you see? Not just like the world of retail. What are you guys seeing as stuff that, early trends that you're embracing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we're really focusing on is the organic interaction and surprise and delight with the technology, right? Like the big thing about technology is it allows a really dynamic interaction, right? And so the ways that we can have people interact with a display and it react specifically to them and organically and within the shopping patterns that they're normally doing. So they're not having to move it to somewhere else and do a thing. They're not having to pick up their phone. They're having an organic experience as they would normally shopping, but they're getting this interaction within the display that's giving them more information. It's more customized. It's more personal, and they don't have to do anything outside of their normal interaction with the product. I think that's something that is a real opportunity, because so much of technology today is taking people out of the experience, and it's two kind of disparate elements. And so if you can just incorporate it into their natural shopping experience, I think that's where the real opportunity is.
Yeah. And I know Moreno is in the audience right now screaming at the top of his lungs, personalization, because that is, something that we strive for across every time. I think same with you, Pamela. Every time, like, personalization is the gold standard, right? Mm-hmm. It's picking an individual out of a crowd. It's making someone feel special. It's making them feel seen, making them feel recognized. It also has the added benefit of, creating a deeper connection with the brand that provides that experience. So, whether that's picking up a shoe, putting it on a shelf and saying, hey, I'm triggering this experience. I'm causing cool stuff to happen. And it's with a product that I've asked for more information on. Or whether that's, something that recognizes that individual. Hey, I know Eric just walked in the store, and I know last time he was here, he bought Tide detergent, and like, oh, well, geez, maybe he wants fabric softener too, right? Like, those levels, and not to get too big brotherish with it, but like those levels of personalization, whether it's a surprise and delight at the store, or whether it's, a, kind of recurring behavioral aspect, those are really powerful moments for consumers. So, that is a trend. It will continue to be a trend. It is always everything. You unlock that, and you're going to unlock a ton of value.
Yeah, and creating an experience that makes sense. Like, why are we have online shopping, so if we're going to the physical space, what is exciting about going to the physical space, other than we can interact with the product, but what are the things that we can do within that space to make it a really unique experience, something that's memorable? And that's where kind of that next level of making the physical experience and the digital experience kind of come together, and the brand,
harmonious.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so David, I see your question out there. with the trend towards online shopping, do you foresee using technology / Web3 to bring people on site? I think that's pretty close to what Eric was talking about. Answer is absolutely, because with the pandemic, we saw what happens when everybody goes fully remote, right? We see what happens when events come back, and we see that connection being made, and we see people connecting with one another, and we see people really hungry for human interaction. I don't think that goes away, right? I think that there is an element to online shopping that is convenient, that is that little endorphin rush of I just bought a thing, shows up on my porch the next day. All of those things are immensely convenient, and not all, I think that's just going to be the way that people do a ton of their shopping in the future, right? That's not going to change. I do think, though, that what Pamela and her team are creating, what brands are creating, and what people innovating at the physical storefront are building is and has to be that next level experience, right? There's got to be another reason to come to the store. If I know that I need a pair of size 10 athletic shoes, I might just go buy them online, right? Oh, I like the looks of these. Let's get them. If I know that there's something special happening at the point of sale, I might go. And honestly, I start to see that with some younger audiences, with stores hosting events, right? With creators creating from inside those spaces, all as a drive to retail. Those have really interesting, there are interesting opportunities that are happening out there with all of them. Eric, I'll throw it back to you. As we think about, digital asset ownership, digital ownership, getting back to what you were saying earlier, what do you think are some ways that people can harness a video game experience to drive to in-store, or a digital experience, or collecting badges, or participating via social, all of which push them into a retail environment?
Great question. I think for me, the most obvious tie-in is make the IRL retail experience mirror the virtual experience. So, I mean, just visually, right? Continue the storyline. You're in game, you are interacting, you might, purchase some in-game virtual assets, and all of a sudden there's an opportunity to tie in the brand's retail experience there. So, okay, here's a QR code, bring this to the retail location. You get to the retail location, there's so many things you can do to, like I said, just enhance that. It's just like leveling up in game but in real life. So you get there, you make your purchase, and with that might come up utility. Maybe because you own the virtual and the physical, you're now part of, like, Nike did a great campaign with Dot Swoosh, and they had their physical shoes that were, tied to the digital assets there. So it's, as you mentioned Moreno earlier, I'll mention him again. Moreno's all about the technology in service of the narrative, of the story, that enhances the human experience, the in real life experience. And if you can, tie those two together, you're just creating a stronger network and a stronger bond between the retail customer and the brand. And Starbucks is another great example of that as well. So as we're, here with Pamela and thinking about, how the retail physical experience is creating something memorable through technology, through story, through, kind of lights and information and graphics, and making that kind of fun and shareable, tying that into sort of a virtual campaign, I think is super interesting. And actually kind of brings me to sort of a follow-up question for you, Pamela. So, it's one thing for a company like DGTL or us at GCL to brainstorm and innovate in interesting ideas. How often are you getting some, sort of prescriptive, I just want this in my store, versus collaborating with the client? And what does that process look like to come up with something new for either a company like Nike or any of your other clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mix. For some of our larger clients, obviously they have, amazing design teams that kind of put together what they would like. Seem puppy. And then, for some other clients, sometimes it's like, I have a concept, I have an idea, I have a goal, and we love that process of brainstorming, figuring out what we can do, having an understanding of, what is our high level creative goal and what are the things that we can propose in order to do that. And then usually for us, when we're in that situation, we're doing some quick sketches in terms of like, okay, here's a few concepts and some sketches to show what the consumer experience would be. And then kind of working back and forth with the client on that, like what's interesting, what's connecting with you. And then from there, getting into the nuts and bolts of like, okay, to bring this together, here's what we can do from a budget perspective. Here's, kind of our fabrication, our timeline. But it really starts with that top level, what is the goal we're trying to achieve? And what are the ideas that we have that could meet that goal? We're also very equipped, of course, beautiful creative deck, do this, got it, we can do that. But we also love having that conversation of what's the goal and what are some ideas. And they don't always have to be highly tech focused. They don't always have to be expensive. And that's the thing that's, I think, is really important is sometimes simple can be just as impactful as complex. It's not just about flash and having a bunch of tech for tech's sake. It's really what we're trying to do to achieve that goal. And we've seen several executions, from other clients that we were very impressed with, and they were simple. And that in itself was the magic of those installations. So, and I can also say too, on the online, shoppers moving to online, I think there is also opportunity to have experiences online that could be interesting and energizing. For instance, like if you've got, like a high heat for sneakers, right? Like maybe there's a few new sneakers launched. You can have people on the online shopping. We could have a physical experience. People could be involved in that event. So it's still online shopping, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to build excitement and events within that realm that there could be a physical experience, right? Like maybe there's sneakers going down and you're pulling one. And if you get it at the right moment, you get that high heat sneaker, right? So it's not in the physical world, but I think it can complement the physical world really well. And I think that's an area, as we're kind of segmenting between online and physical, where we can make the online a little bit more interactive and interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of that, MK, I know you've had some conversations with Claire's, which I don't know so for those of you guys that don't know, Claire's, MK, I'll let you give the background actually. But
so I think it's where I got my ears pierced when I was 16.
Oh, amazing. I was going to say it's where my daughter got her ears pierced. They have some super interesting partnerships. They opened up a store in Roblox, if I'm not mistaken. They're doing some really interesting things, cutting across, Web3, metaverse, and their physical world. MK, I know you've had a conversation or two with them. I think they'd be a great example of organizations that are trying new things in really unique and interesting ways.
Yeah, they stand as an example of a store with the biggest restriction on footprint. They are, the size of my office with every square inch of their wall covered in earrings and hair clips and all of that. And so scalability for that business, they're not looking to expand footprints in retail, but they do want to expand their presence in their consumers' lives. And so it's really interesting. They've been leveraging kind of a metaverse and gaming approach to being all the things that they can be to their target consumers. The idea that there is an entire mall that is Claire's, there's pet shops, there's cafes, there's all these things virtually. What would Claire's be if it was insert blank here? And they're able to do that all digitally, engaging audiences, and they add that level of personalization and composability. So you are controlling your experience, you are selecting your pet in their virtual world. Things that have nothing to do with selling earrings fundamentally, but they do have a very strong story to say of Claire's understands me, helps me identify, helps me personalize myself physically and digitally. I love what they do.
They are doing a really, really spectacular job. And Eric, you mentioned earlier Starbucks also doing an awesome job. We had Steve Kaczynski on who's part of the team that's working on the Starbucks Odyssey program. He also just released an awesome book called The Everything Token, if you want to learn anything about the Web3 world. Starbucks Odyssey is taking their loyalty platform, their app, which, I think a ton of consumers have on their device already, and creating digital stamps, right? And people can collect these stamps, and ownership of these stamps then unlocks utility. I have been an avid Starbucks stamp collector. I have gotten coffee shipped to me. I got a hoodie. I've gotten merch. I've gotten free drinks. MK's got her cup right there. Super interesting. And honestly, all the collection I've done, yes, it's absolutely triggered by purchase, right? Which is then show up, grab a cup of coffee and go. But there are also online activities, right? Go through, play some mini games, play some other things. And then it manifests in stuff that's shipped to me. It's manifests in stuff I can pick up in store. It encourages me to reuse a cup, right? So your social responsibility, looping back to an earlier trend. They're doing a really, really great job of looping in a lot of different ways to interact with the user to surround them. And interestingly enough, fun fact that you can all take away from the day is that Starbucks is I want to say 20th largest bank in the country, because so many people hold credit on their Starbucks card that they have some insane amount of money, billions of dollars in Starbucks credit that's held on Starbucks cards. So we got.
I think one of the things they're doing really well is limited edition with that stamp program. So they're staying relevant. Even if I work from home and I'm not going by my local Starbucks every morning, they're giving me a reason to open an email, to participate in an activity, to stay relevant, to keep me engaged with their brand at times when I might not be getting to a mall. And so I think the digital as a hook to get into the physical is so important now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. We're coming towards the end of this week's session. Thank you guys again, everybody who's joined us on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Please give Pamela and the DGTL team a follow. Give us a follow at GCL. Before we go, we always like to do a lightning round table moment. So this week, and I never prep you guys for this, so you just get to go with whatever I decide. This week, I'm going to say...
You never prep yourself for this either. This is
I know. What is your most memorable retail experience? And this could be everything from getting your ears pierced at Claire's when you were a kid to seeing an amazing Nike installation digital experience at retail to something else. I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to think about what was a really meaningful moment and why. It could have been I've had meaningful interactions where the owner of a store just had a conversation with me, small business wise, right? It doesn't have to be digital, experiential, just thinking about those moments, because honestly, when you think about the powerful moments that resonate with you over weeks and months and years, those are the types of experience you try to replicate, and you replicate that in a number of different ways. So
I got mine.
Okay, Pamela, you're up first then. Go hit us.
So it wasn't something that we did, but it was very memorable. It was a Nike pop-up many years ago in Soho. Back building, you go in. They basically have you take your shoes off, and then they walked you through this area. So they had pebbles, they had grass, they had a few different surfaces that you walked through. So you're barefoot and you're just feeling these different surfaces. And when you came in, they put a sensor on you. So at the end of the experience, they sat you down and they took off the sensor, and then there was the shoe. And around the shoe was all of everybody else's sensory readings from walking through this space, right? So how their feet and how they were physiologically reacting to the environment of walking through it. So you never even put on the shoe, right? But you had this moment where at the end of it, where you realized they are so aware of what's important what this shoe was designed to do, and it's about your experience with these different, different turfs that you're walking along. And at the end of it, it was that shoe which they were selling, and it had all of the waves of everyone who had gone through the space. So your wave along with everyone else. So it was a beautiful art piece. It was simple. You never even tried on the shoe, but the most important part is you understood that they were focused on how your foot is interacting with the environments that you're walking on. And it was powerful and it was simple. And that is the level to which we aspire, is to try to do that level of engagement where it's not gimmicky, it's not flashy, but it's powerful. And it still resonates with me years and years. That's probably my best brand experience ever. Other than the ones we've done.
I love that tactile component.
Yeah.
I'm also marginally annoyed that you went first instead of last, because that was
I give up.
Now the three of us have to like come up with something good. I'm not following that up. What do you guys got?
Sorry, you don't have to invite me to the next one. It's okay.
One of my biggest learnings was through Complex Con. So event-based retail, sort of the same philosophy as the pop-up, which now that I think about it, wow, is that a testament to how much pop-up and limited time experiences stick out in your brain rather than the retail that is always available. But it was a matter of watching the different sneaker brands conduct limited edition drops. And I fundamentally, like, the operational logistics side of my brain went, this is ridiculous. Shoes are different sizes. They're going to get a million people coming to their booth and then they have to match which size. And then I started to understand sneaker culture a little bit and realized that a lot of them were going to end up online and the size only mattered marginally. And how many of these would never even leave their box because they were so valuable and coveted. But they kept scarcity, they kept hype, they kept just building demand in a really different way, that with 4 different sneaker brands on the show floor, all fighting for attention, all Nike or all Adidas, all those brands had to do was say, at 3:00, we have 20 sneakers. That's it. And it drew attention. So that drop model, that scarcity and limited edition model, that whole lesson was well received at Complex Con.
That's a good.
All right. Well, I'll go next, because I came up with this question literally during the middle of the session, so I don't have a great answer for it. I was thinking of like Sharper Image or stores back in the day. I was thinking of Tesla, my first experience at a Tesla store, which is very impressive and digital and cool. All the way to like a sandwich. There's a sandwich place around the corner where the owner knows my name. He knows my kid's name. He greets us on a first name basis. He's super personable, and just having that moment of connection with the human who owns that store is meaningful. But I will go to, I started to think back to when I was a kid, and I don't know if this is going to date me. It probably will. Toys R Us. Like the smell of Toys R Us. It had that plasticky, like delightful smell that I associate with joy and delight and wonder. And I walked through a Toys R Us.
If we could bottle that.
Oh my God. It was the best, and still memorable when I'll run into that scent somewhere. Toys R Us clearly not really around anymore. Although I know they're back as a store within a store concept or something. I think they're coming back to life. But man, that like colors and smell and walking through that door and across the threshold and like toys to the ceiling was just like, it hit me young. And maybe this is a Gen Alpha thing, but like you have that moment with impressionable youths to wow them and build something that I remember 40 years later, which I think is meaningful. And I can still smell it. Like now I want to bottle it and smell it. But
that memories are so strong. Just the smell of a mall. I just think of like Cinnabon back in the 90s.
Yeah.
The pretzels, so good. Did we lose?
All right, take us home, Eric.
All right. So my memorable retail experience happened a couple years ago. I was in Paris with my wife, and we got a chance to go to the Champs-Élysées and visit the Paris Saint-Germain headquarters, where their retail space. PSG is a big soccer club out of Paris. Messi and Neymar used to be on the team now, Mbappe. And it was like several floors. It had all the jerseys. There was a line, like, with like the ribbon, cordoned off to get in, because there was like there's only a certain amount of people allowed in the space at one time. And in the top floor, there was a couple interactive things, for retail. One was, you could get your name, embroidered or stitched on the back or whatever, a number. And then there was a digital display where you could get your photo taken and get like a selfie and get like your favorite player, like, right next to you, and kind of have like a little takeaway moment. So that was pretty special for a number of reasons. So that was my.
So 2 things popped into my head as we were doing that exercise. Number 1, the first time I walked into Cold Stone,
The smell.
and that experience of customization and personalization through the retail experience. When you were talking about your sandwich shop, I started to think, oh my God, seeing process and science, or
And that smell of a waffle cone.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. And then also when Winnie, your dog, jumped on your lap, my brain totally went to, oh my God, I want to go into like PetSmart through the eyes of a dog, like kind of experience that pure joy, excitement of there's a toy aisle just for me. Like, how do we capture that feeling of Winnie's excitement and bottle it for grown-ups?
Yeah, she does like to shut my laptop down when she wants attention and then dive into my arms. And then fall asleep.
Oh God, for PetSmart, I just have to share this because it's silly. So your experience of, wanting Winnie's excitement, totally get it. I have the opposite. We have a cat named Mango, and we bought him the like Cadillac of, cat towers. It's like 8 feet tall. Never even smelled it.
Let me guess, it was the box that was the draw.
It was the box.
Right.
Totally.
It was the box that it came in. Yeah,
Cats, boxes.
Cats are so fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much to everybody in the audience, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, listening on pod, wherever we end up broadcasting. As always, we appreciate your time and attention. If you have any topics you want us to cover or any people you'd like us to cover them with, feel free to drop us a line. Our DMs are open. Drop us a line on the Gen City Labs page on LinkedIn or on X. We are always happy to take feedback. In fact, a lot of the feedback is what drives topics like today's. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with what might be tentatively a review of Super Bowl activations, or we might publish something intermittently. We're still deciding. But either way, thank you all for joining us. MK, thank you for hosting. Pamela, Eric, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be a part of it.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.